out the Mitsubishi, and that summer we was all always going to the beach and hanging out and shit. And one day Nigel got a ride from him, and this is the time where Nigel was walking on the back of his shoes, and his sneakers were turning into like slippers, house slippers.
Yo, are you serious?
Nah, that part of the story is true. I used to not give a fuck about my clothes. Like he's not lying. But did I ever have a fly just pop up out of my shoe? That part he likes to kind of, spice up the story a little bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. Am I gonna say I took the best care of my clothes? No, I didn't. But did I have a fucking fly out of my shoe? like come on.
Yeah, we was cracking up about that shit.
So this nigga got in the car. So this nigga got in the car and the shit just popped out the sole or some shit.
I don't know, because I was in the back seat and Nigel was in the front seat while Henry was driving, and the next like as Henry I guess was about to drop him off, Nigel was switching his shoes, and then there was a fly that was flying around in the car. And
what
the fuck? Why?
See, this is how I know he's lying, because Laz forgot the story and how he originally told it. Yeah, that's not. It was the original story was I was at David's house and I took my shoes off, and then a fly just kind of slipped out as I took my foot out the fucking shoe.
No, it was in the car, bro. We gotta.
No, that's not the way you used to tell a story. You over time you've lost it because it's not true. Because it's not true.
Yo, the way how angry you getting, dog. I feel like this shit might be true, yo.
I'm not anywhere near angry.
No, because back then, Nigel used to get so tight back then, because like this is probably like a year or two before we started being cool spits, but I used to come up with like stories with Nigel, and people used to go around believing it.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is the Highly Advised Podcast. You know what I'm saying? We're here for another week. Me and two of my good friends, probably two good friends to y'all also. I don't know, y'all make a guess. But it's me, Spence, my other two co-hosts, Lau, Nigel. Say what's up.
Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Nigel. Relaxing Jackson.
No G in his body. I'm always gonna say that shit.
Big Cozy, Live Big Cozy, Too Cozy on Instagram. What's up, everybody?
Yeah, and follow me at Saint Kitch on Instagram, Saint Kitch ST.KITCH. So, what's going on with y'all though, man? How y'all been doing since the last time we spoke?
Not too bad, man. Playing Doom Eternal, working out, chilling. Just trying to
jailhouse workouts in.
Say it again.
You been in your jailhouse workouts in?
Pretty much, man. Push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, running. Like that's pretty much it.
You listening to Jadakiss? You listening to Jadakiss and the Locks when you work out or not?
Specifically the Locks and DMX when I work out. Nothing else
you
but
on
that.
Some jailhouse shit,
yeah,
real.
that's all I can listen to. Anything else is untolerated. I can't do that.
You like motherfucking what's that nigga name? Oh, you was like Will Smith in what was that dumb movie he was in? It was just him and that stupid dog.
I Am Legend.
Suicide Squad.
No, I Am Legend, bro.
I Am Legend. You know when Bull was just working out by himself, like it's like, fam, what are you training for? You preparing for the Rona apocalypse?
It makes sense though. He was training to run from the things, whatever they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. That shit ain't doing no good though. He still died, I think, right?
Like you and spoiler alert, like it's like he
ain't no
the only reason he died is because he threw himself into the end. Like, say it again.
No, I was saying there ain't no spoiler alert. They should have seen it by now. It's a horrible movie.
Nah, man. Like, because you never know. But it's like, yeah, that movie's like almost 20 years old. Like, maybe in like 5 years, that movie will be 20 years old.
No. Spence said it's a horrible movie.
Oh, no, it's not terrible.
It's to me, I think it's Will Smith's worst movie ever.
Whoa, you must not see Wild Wild West.
Yeah, there's a few movies here.
Wild Wild West. I just think, to me, I Am Legend. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I Am Legend is just a really bad movie. I had to watch that movie like 3 times, and I kept falling asleep on it.
Have
It
you ever
was
seen Men in
just
Black 2?
yeah. I've seen almost all of his movies,
Oh, and you enjoyed that.
more than I Am Legend.
All
A man,
right, man. Like,
a man walking around with a dog, bro.
nah, man, that shit's crazy. It's not my favorite movie ever, but I think it's far from like one of the worst movies I've seen. Like, I I can understand like people not even liking maybe like 7 pounds or anything like that. Which I mean, I think 7 pounds is a decent movie, but it's not like my favorite. You know what I mean?
Never
Yeah,
seen it.
Oh,
it's a.
okay.
I think that's actually a pretty good movie. I know. He has some good movies. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's had better movies than like 7 Pounds and all of them. I think to me, Pursuit of Happiness may be my favorite movie of his.
I think
But
that might be everybody's favorite movie of his, for real. Did he win any awards for that?
He got nominated, I think.
I know he got. Yeah, I think he got nominated. I don't know if he won. He probably did though.
Well, shit. Let's start off, y'all. What do y'all want to start with this week?
Well, before anything, I was gonna ask, because you said how your week was. I was gonna figure out, what you've been up to, Lau.
So this week has been same thing as last week, which is basically, teleworking, doing schoolwork. I got one more week of school for the semester, then I'm done. Then I'm off for the summer, which is cool, but it gives me time to get ready for the fall semester.
I
Plus,
feel you.
and I don't know if I told you guys, but I'm looking to do some certifications for my IT stuff.
Oh, that's what's
So
up then. That's
yeah,
what's up.
that's what I have planned this summer. But yeah, last week is just nothing but school and teleworking. That's it. And, not a whole lot, and I'm getting to save a whole lot of money, which I'm happy about. So
I bet so. I'm quite sure you've been blasting nothing but fucking Westside albums since the shit came out. Just working from home, blasting the music, working on homework. Probably, I bet.
yeah, actually, yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, all day yesterday, I was the whole day at work. I played this album like twice straight
Yeah.
through. Then I had to take a break and I started listening to some other music too that dropped. But yeah, it was definitely West Side's album. I'm fanboying for that album right now, and that's not good because I gotta be objective, not subjective. But I just really enjoy the album a lot.
So,
Oh,
what are your
word.
thoughts? Like, what do you think about it? More or less anything? Because I know you were like probably the most excited out of everybody that I know for that album.
That nigga was literally on his knees every night before bed praying for Paris.
Please,
Yo, I
please, God.
I think the
Please
album
let
is
this
like
happen.
that. So remember Kanye West album, The Life of Pablo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that album, when it first came out, and I listened to it a few times, I enjoyed it, but there were some songs on there that kept it from being like perfect, right?
Okay.
But I like the direction that he was trying to take it. I feel like Pray for Paris is no way like The Life of Pablo because it doesn't experiment or nothing at all. But I feel like that's like it's really art with that album. It really is. It's not the You're not gonna hear the best of the best rapping. You know, you're not gonna hear that, nor you're not gonna hear a timeless classic like Illmatic on it. So I'm not gonna gas it like that. But I feel like as a body of work, as far as rap goes, especially out of all the releases that came yesterday, Pray for Paris is to me it was easily the best rap album out this year so far. Not to say any other rap album won't beat it later this year, but right now, from April to all the way back in January, hands down, Pray for Paris for me as a whole body of work.
To me, like anticipating that album, because like I told you, I just got like I used to listen to Westside before, but I just couldn't get into his voice
Right.
until like a couple months ago when they dropped that Griselda project. And listening to all his shit, I was like, okay, son is nice. And this album, to me, I think my expectations for the album were just a little higher than what he delivered
Hmm.
to me. But like, to me, it was a great album. I think the thing that got me was like, cause like to me, I'm into the music, but I like all the shit that surrounds the music also.
Okay.
And the way like he was able to the way he was building anticipation without having to do commercials just off Instagram of sneak peeks, IG stories, playing stuff here and there. I was like, okay, like it kind of made you to me. It made me more anticipated to be like, all right, like the video you sent me with the dude tap dancing.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, like I ain't even gonna hold you the whole album. I'm like, yo, where's this dude that's tap dancing at? Because that shit's gotta be hard. And
Well, that part though, I thought that was going to be built into like a beat or something. It wasn't. It was more or less like an outro type of deal. And I was
Yeah.
kind of like, and I was like,
that
oh,
shit was
I
still
was
hard.
expecting. It was hard, but I was expecting something else.
Yeah,
Okay.
I feel you on that. Like that was something I was kind of like surprised about because I thought, oh, you gotta do tap dancing. I thought, like you said, it'd be built into the beat, or he would just find a way of making it more than what you just saw. Like,
Right.
okay, we're gonna have tap dance, and maybe that's gonna be like your hi hats through this part of the beat or some shit like that.
Yeah.
But even then, it was just like, yo, this shit is tough. Like his shit is still, the shit was still solid. Um, on my to me, it's either one or two right now when it comes to rap albums of the year. Boldy James, to me, he's still up there. Price of Tea in China is still one of my
That
favorite albums from
that
this year.
that's a good choice, man. That was a good choice too. That's a good album. Also, Alchemist produced the whole thing, and
Yeah,
that those two right there are one and two.
yeah,
I
and
listened to the album. I thought it was pretty. I thought it was pretty good. Like I like all the features on the album. Like mostly, like if I'm being honest, like I would say like all the features on the album, like I thought were pretty good. I like Freddie Gibbs' verse. I like Tyler Creator's verse. They were both good. No Vacancy is probably like my favorite song on the album so far.
and that's what
Um,
because I don't be checking names when I'm playing the album.
No Vacancy is the first song after the intro, and Tyler Creator actually produced what is it
327, right?
32. I thought
No,
327
no.
was the song he was on.
The I know what you're talking about. I gotta look at the track listing again. But
It's crazy. Go
he
ahead.
was two features, but one of the songs he did produce.
Tyler the Creator is a talented artist, man. I know that I've been following his career like for a while now, but it's just like I'm still kind of amazed sometimes, like when I see him do things, like the range of stuff that he can do, and just like the range of how he does it. Like he's a very talented dude. Like especially like when it comes to his production, like just the way he does it, it's like it's amazing. Like it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I've been thinking about this for a minute when it comes to Tyler, especially somewhere along the line, we gotta ask, like, we have to sit down and have the real discussion of like, where do we put him on that list? Like, because either he's somewhere when it comes to production alone, like he's somewhere in that. To me, he might be like a top 10 producer of all times to some extent, and like, or even if we take out just production itself and just put artists and as a full package, he may be like he might be like one of the top 10 artists in hip hop to
Not
me.
Quavo.
They're just gonna put Quavo right above Jay-Z. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just like it's right there. Put him number one.
Yeah, if you talk to Waka Flocka, especially.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
With the Westside project though, right? I went on his I don't know if y'all went on his page, but you know how he sells merch all the time? Well, apparently like he stepped it up another level. And like there's gonna be vinyl for this album also, but he actually had like I think 100 paintings
Yeah,
that
of the cover. I just
no, it was not
before
even of the cover.
of just random art.
Yeah, it's like he's doing a painting. I think he has like the painting that he had with Virgil that he's selling. But he's also like if you go on his page, he's actually selling another painting that's I guess part a collaboration with the project itself. And I think he says only like 100 or some shit like that on there. And I'm like, bruh, like the way he's transitioning the game is like kind of crazy. And that's why it's like, yo, when it comes to this shit, like it's gonna suck if he actually decides to keep to his word and be like, "Oh, this is my last album."
Do
Because,
rappers ever really like retire though? You know what I mean?
but he said he never liked rapping though like that. Like he only rapped because like his brother was in jail or some shit like that. I heard. Like he said that in Rap Radar, he was like, you know, like all the projects he had like last year in that Rap Radar interview. He said, you know, that was probably an accumulation of like maybe 2 weeks of my whole life of recording. Recorded for 2 weeks out the whole year, or 13 days out the whole year, and then after that, I was just doing stuff that was not related to music or not related to like making music. So, and you gotta think about it, like this Pray for Paris thing. Probably what's this? April. I think he probably started recording this maybe in February, from what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah. I remember an interview on Rap Radar when it wasn't just him. He had Benny and Conway on there, and he
Yeah,
was like, "Yeah, I got something." Uh, like he was starting on something, and that was early in the year. So you're right. He probably didn't take forever to make this album, which is to me it's super impressive because it's kind of like how can you make an album that you just dropped yesterday, which is right now the consensus is it's a fire album, and you don't take a long time like some of these other artists do, and then these other artists that drop album, outside of probably like Drake or something like that, the album is kind of like their disappointments, or they're like, it's kind of mid, like,
yeah,
like I don't want to stray too far away from the Westside stuff, but like for example, the Playboi Carti song, right? You guys know I'm the Carti fan out of
Right.
all three.
yeah.
That fucking song was trash. It was just garbage,
He
and
was still
I
rapping
know,
like a baby.
yeah. Um,
Trash.
but it was the number one song Thursday going into Friday before all the albums dropped yesterday. It beat Drake. It had like the number one video on YouTube and everything. And when you listen to the song, it was just like, man, this song is. I'm saying it's trash because I was expecting something else, but it was just really like I don't I don't know how anybody could really support this because he's not really rapping. You know what I mean?
I mean,
He's
but does
not
he
at
ever?
all. No, he doesn't. But like when you take
Got a point.
years, right? It's like 2 years since his last album before he officially dropped anything, right? And I'm not talking about all the leaks from YouTube and all that shit because those aren't official drops. And his first single in 2 years, it's what he puts out. You think like he would put out something like, "Wow, like this is you know, going to be the next wave. But and he put what he put out is like, well, it's like an extension of his last album, and it's very disappointing. And I just think compared to like Pray for Paris and even the Babies album that just came out, I was just like, man, it's not, it's not what I want to hear right now. And I just think it's a trash song. You guys should give it a listen. Not even listen to the whole song because it's not worth listening to the whole song. Listen to the for real. Just listen to like the at least the first verse and then cut it off if you can even tell what the first verse is.
I don't
So
But
know. Like,
I feel like, well, go ahead.
I don't know. Like, it's weird because with an artist like Playboi Carti, because I've had to I've had to grow accustomed to the way he raps. I'm not really expecting him to do anything that's gonna blow my mind now. Like, I've already had to try to get used to what he does already to even like accept it. And now I have to, now that I've actually got to the point where I accept it, if he keeps on doing that forever, I'll just be like, okay, well, that's Playboi Carti, and I'm either gonna like it or I'm not. So it's when I listen to it, my ears will probably be different than your ears, where you might expect something different from him at this point in time. To me,
yeah,
I just expect the baby voice.
Yeah, that I mean, I keep it a buck with you. That's how I look at it the same way. Like even and like for me, when it comes to Playboy Cardi, I base like him off of like what I see on social media, right? And with social media, it's the baby voice. What? What? And that's and yo, the kids love the shit. So,
They
cause
do.
I feel yeah, cause I think the kids today are more. I don't even want to say kids today. That makes me feel older. Sound old as shit. But like, I think like the new generation of music is less about words and more about feeling. You
yep,
feel me? So Like,
that's what he is 100%. He's 100% a vibe. You know what I mean?
and you know something, when it comes to that, like you gotta let that man be great. It's just the same for it. It's just like, yo, you grew out of it, because with his shit, like, it's nothing like Magnolia. It's like, even Magnolia though, like, a lot of people were saying like, oh, you barely understand what he's saying half the time.
I,
And that was
to
like
me,
his biggest song.
yeah, Magnolia was his biggest hit song, but I understood what he was saying. Magnolia, he with Magnolia, he just wasn't saying it. He wasn't saying too much. It was just like a repeated
Yeah,
set of lyrics. Yeah,
See,
but
and that's the thing with artists like that, where it's like they're when you get to the point where you're not expecting a lot for them, when actually, all right, for example, Waka Flocka, right? Waka Flocka, we knew for a long time Waka Flocka wasn't a good rapper. Then one day, out of the blue, he drops a Chirac freestyle where he's like actually like rapping, and I was like,
really.
oh yeah, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
he's actually like rapping for real, and it's a little different when rappers like that do that because we don't the bar is set so low for them that like when they actually go above our expectations, it's like, oh shit, like I wonder how long they can actually do this because that's not the type of artist that they've shown themselves to be so far.
Yeah.
Flocka is a lot better now than what he was when we were listening to him all the time, though, Nigel. Like
Right.
now, he doesn't rap like what he used to at
But you
all.
but you gotta also realize when Flocka first came out, like, I think, what was the song? What was the song? What was like that first song that he had that was like a big hit? It
Oh,
came out
let's
like,
do
oh
it.
yeah, oh let's do it. I think he said, oh let's do it was like one of the first few songs he ever recorded in his life.
I believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
like he literally started off rapping. Like his career literally started off with him just started like, oh, I'm about to start rapping. I've been around this shit. I'm about to start rapping, and I just had a hit because the CEO is locked up right now. So I think that's just how, like, I think artists like him, they just progress differently, and that's how their sound changes.
That's
Same
true.
goes the same goes with Cardi, where Playboi Carti, where it's like, yo, his shit is changing, but it's just he probably is just like, yo, the shit's not broke, don't fix it. The kids, he knows what his fans want. So I think
Right.
from a fan perspective of like the people that's going to shoot him to number one, that's the shit they want to listen to. So he's like, yo, I probably got some fire bars I can give niggas, but for what? My fans want to listen to that. So I don't know. Well, I think we're gonna learn. We'll see what's gonna happen with him, because he's still got to deal with that whole like gun charge and shit like that.
I think him and Uzi are beefing too.
I
I
think
s-
it's just friendly competition. You know what I mean? It's like I
Yeah.
don't think they actually seriously have an issue.
No, I'm not thinking like that too. I was thinking on like some internet shit. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah.
yeah, because from what I hear, they make like really great music with each other. But
Yeah, so they're probably just like, oh, he's ass, like oh, like it's in reality, like Uzi's just kind of putting people onto his shit because it's like, oh man, I bet he won't do good because then his fans are gonna be like, oh yeah, watch this, and then it's like free promotion essentially.
I felt like
yeah,
essentially they're like they're not the same artist, but they're in the same pool, the same genre, and they're kind of like the top of that genre. I feel like it's like Cardi, Uzi, and Yachty. You know what I mean? They're like the kings of that type of rap.
I can see that. Hey, quick question.
Yeah,
So like when it came to like the Playboy Cardi and Lil Uzi beef, right?
yeah.
Would you say it's like the who was it that Joe Budden was uh beefing with? Was it Mims?
Uh,
You
yeah.
know, you remember who when he was like he had a fake beef with an artist, and like they were
No.
supposed yeah, he faked him and like another artist. I forget who it was. Or it wasn't just Blaze. It might have been Mims or somebody. He faked the beef with an artist. I forget who it was. It's not Mims. But
Oh,
he faked the beef with an artist, and then the artist happened to be at the radio station at the same time as Joe Budden was. And like they were texting each other like, "Yo, I'm at the station. You're gonna have to leave, because I got to get out safely, so they don't catch us like with each other." Like, is it one of those fake beefs where it's just for promotional purposes only, or what?
I was thinking more along the lines of like Kanye 50 Cent, where it's like, oh, like I'm gonna sell more than him in this week, and like in reality, the only thing it does is help the other artists to have a little bit of competition because both the fan bases are gonna show up in full force.
Yeah, but see, 50. Oh, I ain't gonna get too deep into it because I'm always been a big fan of like 50 when it came to like the shit that he's doing outside of music. But
Right.
even like then, like I watched some interviews, like he really thought he was gonna beat Kanye West at that time. Like,
Yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know how
like
either.
yeah, I don't get it, but he was like, yeah, he was like, oh, he's like he tried to break down like the metrics and like because 50 Cent is like extremely business oriented. So like he broke it down to like just the science of how like the placement of artists and how artists are selling and comparing their numbers to his numbers. And he legitimately thought he was gonna be able to sell more, but nah. But even then, like that was just a healthy like promotion at the end of the day, a beef that
Right.
was nothing more than a promotion. So
I want to say one more thing about the Westside thing, then we could put that to a close. I think what really helps the album that made that album fire was like his beat selection was really top notch. It wasn't the typical beats that you hear with rappers today. You know what I mean? Like you would hear out of like a Young Thug song or something like that. Like his was very it
it's
was sample
Griselda.
yeah, yeah, and I loved it. And one song that really stuck out to me was that Versace song by the Instagram guy Jay Versace. And I like if you look at his page, you would never see Jay Versace producing that beat at all. Like you just want to look at it. You're not denying his talent, obviously not, right? Because we just heard it, but you just look at him and you're like, wow, I can't believe this guy actually produced this beat. And big kudos to Jay Versace for that. You know what I mean? And I'm interested to hear like,
Allegedly.
go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say I was listening to something earlier this morning. Allegedly, they're supposed to be doing a. He's supposed to produce a whole album for him.
So
A whole
Westside
album
was
for
already
Westside?
done.
From my understanding, from something I listened to this morning, he's supposed to
I
do.
thought Westside was retiring after that.
That's what I like. To me, I'm still sticking with the
No.
until Westside says something otherwise. He's retiring. I'm only taking for his word because at the end of the day, though we know him as an artist, he is the owner of Griselda. So he's a label
Yeah,
owner. So and he has Conway,
Benny,
Benny, and the girl they just signed. So
yeah.
I'm gonna take him for his word that because he rather just be behind the scenes and work on like all the other dope stuff that's going on out there. But allegedly, they're saying that they may be doing an album together. But yo, speaking of Waka Flocka earlier, did you see that shit that he posted
Yeah.
about the West Coast or whatever?
Yeah.
About Atlanta like
Atlanta, the
having the
longest run.
longest reign in rap.
Yeah,
Well, I it's funny because so I sent that post to a good amount of my homies on Instagram, and you two are the only two people who disagree with him. And some of the people I sent it to, we're mutual friends with as well, and they agree with it. And it's crazy because like I'm not saying I don't want to say he's right or wrong in this situation. I'm okay with playing devil's advocate because this one is kind of like we got to look at the facts versus be emotional about it. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Because
right.
before saying something like, "Oh well, the East Coast had it," well, remember, Atlanta is on the East Coast, so
But it's South though.
it's
It's,
well, yeah, you could say. Well, they say North Carolina is the South, but it's really not the South, right?
I look at it more like Atlanta and New York, more or less than anything else. Like if we're gonna say like who's had the longest reign, I think of like not the East Coast because you're right. Like the South is technically the East Coast. Like I would
Right.
say the New York reign and the Atlanta reign are the two like most notable reigns, and you can say the West Coast is in there somewhere too.
I was gonna say, yeah, man, you came from California, man. They're heavy in the game too.
but to me, that's why it's South. Like to me, it's West Coast, East Coast, South, and then you have the Midwest. Like
Right, right,
be, because you have like when you really like. Granted, when he's saying like the South, i.e. Atlanta, you at the same time when you look at the southern artists overall, there's a lot of southern artists that have spanned out from, because even in that south run, you have to add T-Pain, you have to add Plies, you have to
Oh, the
add
Florida boys.
yeah,
Houston,
like yeah, Houston, like you got artists from
all of
Houston.
Houston.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't like we can't discredit that like oh no, that's the West Coast. No, Houston, Swisher House is is
Yeah.
southern music at
Well,
the
I
end of
mean,
the
and
day.
that's why I say like the South because it's like if you're gonna take, it's kind of hard when you think about it because you're pretty much talking about from Atlanta to Texas, they had a run. And it's like, well, hold on, wait, like let's not do that because you're not separating it. And I feel like that's kind of like you said, it is kind of making it so it seems like it's not fair or you're not putting people who are deserving of a run in there somewhere because they definitely did have one at one point. So it's like that's why, like for me, like in as far as this conversation in my head goes, I think Atlanta and New York, just because of the states of hip hop that we've actually been through for for a long time, I would say.
Yeah. I think it's Atlanta, New York, and California are
Yeah.
the top three, and because you, like Texas, they did have a run, but Texas, they like if you think about it, the biggest artist from Texas right now is Make the Stallion. You know what I mean? And outside of that, yeah, unless you follow the Texas rap scene heavily, you're not gonna know too many artists from there.
It's
And
probably what Meg, Yellow Beezy, and
Maxo Cream.
kinda like Maxo Cream, but I think he's not as big as Meg nor Yellow Beezy, I think, in
yeah,
terms of
definitely
singles
not
and
big as
stuff.
yeah,
No,
definitely not
definitely
big as
not.
Mag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's
So
not bigger than Yellow Beezy personally, but even though
I,
I'm more of a
you may
fan
be right. You may be right.
Maxo
He's not
Cream.
bigger than Yellow Beezy. Yeah, I was gonna say I'll listen to Maxo any day of the week over
Facts.
Yellow Beezy, but I just feel like with here's what Waka Flocka is kind of right? Because he with his opinion, I feel like it's kind of like a vague statement because he wasn't kind of specific with it. If we were talking about like today or the past 2 to 3 years, I would say yeah, Atlanta for sure. But if you're talking about from like a what rap's been out for what now? What 4 decades or going on to 4 decades, right?
Going on
Because
four
it's been out,
decades, yeah.
yeah, been out since the late '70s, and you cannot discredit New York because New York has been running the game until the '90s. You know what I mean? And then the West Coast started to come in the '90s. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. You also have Texas with the screwed up click. You had Common doing this thing up in Chicago, but they weren't headlining like the West Coast and East Coast were in the '90s. Then the 2000s came around. Then you have Texas. Then you had Atlanta coming aboard. So I feel like you know, you can't discredit New York at all. But if you're talking about like of today, the past three, maybe you can even say 5 years, then yeah, you could say Atlanta. You
You
know,
can I mean if we saying this if only way I can say the South has had the longest run is if you go in the past 15 years.
Exactly.
But to me, because to me, a run means you're the most dominant,
right?
and the South has never been. The South has had great artists. They've had a lot of good talent come out of there, but they're not the most. They haven't had the longest run. Like, don't get me wrong. You had Outkast. I think Outkast first came out in '93 or '92 or
Yeah,
whatever, and that's when they had the South got something to say BS or whatever.
yep,
But
yep,
and then you had Scarface, Ghetto Boys. Like you have memorable people throughout the span of music for the South in the '90s, with from them, Outkast, Goody Mob, uh, Ghetto Boys, Master P, uh, and all of that. Like only way to me I could feel like the South has any way of saying they've had the longest run is if you're talking about producers. But other than that, like nothing. To be honest with you, most of all the hip hop is originated from the East Coast. Even
it
like
it
even
is, but it is originated from the East Coast, right? Like that's a fact. And once again, it dominated all the way up until the '90s when these other regions of America started to really chip in. But what if Atlanta, because Atlanta is running the game right now, right?
Absolutely.
What if Atlanta continues to run the game for the next 5 years?
I mean,
Then
but
what
we can't
fuck us?
speak for that.
No, we
Yeah.
can't. You're right, but right now they've been on a hot streak, a big time hot streak, and you can't. And I feel like to discredit the momentum that they're on right now would be kind of like, I don't want to say hating, but it's kind of like it's like, oh, I think they're about to die out. Man, it doesn't even look like they're about to die out. I think that, you know, it, if New York is number one, Atlanta is a close number two. That's how I look
Yeah.
at it right now.
In terms of longest runs, yeah.
Yeah,
Eh,
longest run. Now we could talk. Now we all know that the quality of music goes to New York, even probably the West Coast, and probably like Texas and Chicago, because Atlanta, outside of Outkast and a select few others, a good 90% of the artists that come from Atlanta just are not great rappers. They're not.
I don't even want to say that because I feel like that's discrediting, Atlanta. And like, don't get me wrong, like I think some more prevalent artists that have came up out of Atlanta aren't uh aren't necessarily the best. I don't want to say that there's only but a few good rappers there, like
I
because
mean,
they're
you, but can you seriously? So in New York, right? We could probably talk this podcast from all the great rappers that came from New York. We would
right.
probably do that same thing for California, and maybe we could even do a little bit for down south as a whole. But just from Atlanta, I don't think we can. We probably could give out 10 solid names of legitimately good rappers from Atlanta.
Atlanta.
And, yeah, and I like Atlanta music, but I'm just saying like far as legitimate good rappers that we can debate on who's the best and all that, we can't give too many names out of
But
that
that's
city.
what but that's why I think he just kind of coupled it with like the South in
Uh,
general because I think Atlanta's kind of always stuck. Atlanta's has some good artists come out of there. I can't really think of any offhand that are like the spiritual lyrical miracle rappers,
outside
but
of
like
3 Stacks and Big
yeah,
Boy.
yeah. But even then, like their run ended a long time ago to me.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, heck yeah.
Andre 3000 is one of those rappers that pops in and out when like
He's
he's
retired.
just yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, oh, you kids doing some songs. Let me get on one of them real quick. He's one of them type of artists, and then he goes off into you running into him pumping gas out of nowhere. Like he's one of those artists. But when you look at Southern rappers in a whole, like you have, I mean, North Carolina's the South, so that's J. Cole.
Right.
That's J. Cole. Isaiah Rashad is Tennessee. You had Big Crit at one moment in time. I mean, offhand, off top, that's only people I can think of off top. But like Southern artists, they're lyrical to some extent. It's just not compared to what the bar is when you come from like that East
New
Coast.
York.
Yeah, I'm not even going to just say New York. You have to say East Coast because
Right.
honestly, some of the most lyrical rappers didn't come from New York. Jersey held it down by far a lot. Also, like there's a lot of great talent that came out of Jersey that we can't just overlook.
Right.
No, like, and that's
Or
that's
Philly.
what I'm saying. Like, without saying too much about who's like how many people aren't from there that are actually doing their thing, it's like, you know what I mean? I don't want to say that there's not a lot of like actual uh what's the word I'm looking for? Like lyrical miracle rappers coming from the South. It just like I would have to actually take out time to get that list together. That's all.
Yeah, and but see, to me, I feel like if I got to go through all of that of just putting like and I'm like a person that knows my music pretty well or pretty decently, like I'm pretty knowledgeable on like music and like the history of like a lot of hip hop shit. Like if I got to go through all of that, it's probably that means I'm probably searching, and I like bars, so like I'm really searching for some shit if I have to go through all of that, and
See, and that's what I was saying earlier. Like, if we're talking about quality, Atlanta isn't it. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about quality as far as like have actual rap, not just how the song sounds. Yeah,
Yeah.
Atlanta is not it. But if we're talking about longevity, it's up there. Now to say it's longer than New York, then it's like I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, to me, just Atlanta is the hottest city, is like the hottest city for like the past 10, 15 years, damn near.
It
But
is.
probably past 10, 12 years, I would say. But because even like I remember getting out of high school and I knew people that were like, oh, I'm moving to Atlanta. And like I know like people that are younger now, like kids I know that are younger that are like in high school, about to get out of high school, will be like, oh yeah, like I'm trying to move to Atlanta. What you trying to be an actor, rapper? Oh, it's just Atlanta's popping. Like it's literally like it's like black. It's called Black Hollywood for a reason. So you got a lot of talent in Atlanta. It's just when it comes to like that rapping shit and who had the longest run, nah. Like hip hop started in the park in the 70s
Yeah.
by some guys that was actually from Jersey. And like we've ran like East Coast has ran rap longer than anybody else. Like and I think you starting to get and you're starting to get even like even more artists that are coming from like that East Coast side that have a chance of actually coming back because when do like if you really want to start talking runs, right? When are you starting to run at? Like for the
Well,
South, like
I,
well, if you're
I
talking about as the South as a whole, you would have to start at the '90s because there was a lot of
for the South.
yeah. You
like
would have to
like a run.
you
I mean, like they were the
if you
most
talk about
dominant.
if you're talking about as a whole, you would have to start in the '90s because it
Ooh.
No, I
you
think
you but you have to like how can you discredit
the run for the South starts
groups?
around like 2000. I would say 2007, 2006,
Whoa,
I'm
absolutely
saying
not.
maybe
How,
2004.
I
but
that's what I
but
was gonna say. 2004, 2005 at the
but
earliest.
what's your criteria of run then? Because
I'm
if
Like
saying
dominant,
when they
like the
were,
most
yeah,
dominant sound. Like the most whoever had the most dominant sound at that time. Like to me, it's hard.
okay, if
Granted, like
yes,
granted we
then the
were
early
kids.
2000s.
Yeah, like because
Yeah.
to me, you can't tell me the South was actually having a run when you had Jay Z, DMX, Method Man, Redman, Ja Rule, 50 Cent. Like you can't tell me that they were had the South was really running music at that
No,
time.
well,
yeah,
not
if you're
only
talking about
that,
the
but I
most,
mean, like
go ahead.
when you think about like just the South having the dominating sound, like you got to think about the artists that were big around like 2003, 2005. Like that was like around like that was around like the Ghetto Fabulous era, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's the ghetto
Okay,
Yeah.
so
fabulous there.
you're talking about like TI's, Ludacris's, like people like them who were like pretty prominent around that time. They were prominent, but they weren't dominating. So it's like even
I
past
think
then,
that's
like
what
you can still it's kind of shaky. Like I would
No,
say
you. How were they not dominating in the
the,
early
I think
2000s?
they
that I think they
Pick.
were starting.
exactly.
I think that run was starting somewhere shortly after they got in the game. Like just because I heard 24s by when I heard 24s by Ti, I was like, yo, this shit is hard. Like, and I
Right,
was a
but you.
kid. It was hard, but to me at that time, I wasn't saying, oh, the South is running. Like, there was no way you were going to tell anybody at that time, yo, that was from like. Granted, the rules changed based off region at that time because of the lack of internet. But you're not telling me it was going to be hard to really tell someone, oh, like you have like New York rappers at that time. Like 50 Cent is bigger than Ti
Right,
at that time.
right.
G-Unit is
Right,
bigger
50,
than.
50 was bigger. You still had Jay, so I get it. But I'm talking about in the early 2000s. It was getting to as a collective. It was like Texas on the map with a little bit of Atlanta, and I feel like the only people from New York that was like really killing it, and I'm talking about like globally, was like 50 and Jay. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying Nas wasn't big at the
Ja
time because
Rule.
he still was big. Yeah, he was big too, but now you get into like selective names. You know what I mean? We're
But
not
no,
talking
but
but
about
they
I'm
were
no,
dominating
they
they
were
were
the biggest
dominating in general.
artists.
Exactly.
Those were like the biggest artists. Like I think the thing is when we bring up Ja Rule a lot, we always think 50 Cent. So when you think 50 Cent, you just say, oh, he just ate that man's career and that was it. But we can't forget when Ja Rule was one of the one of the most popping biggest artists in hip hop at one moment in time. He was doing music with Jennifer Lopez. You
Right.
got to remember
Yeah.
that. So he like when you start bringing up selective names, it's bringing up like the big names of that time. But when you're mentioning like Southern artists, it's not necessarily bring the biggest names that you're bringing up are just the big names that they had, the names that were starting that run.
Yeah, but that then technically speaking, that means Atlanta is dominating even today. Then by your standards, right?
No,
Because
that's
that
not.
no, wait,
Uh,
but wait. Drake is the number one artist in the world, right?
Right.
And so does that mean that Canada is now dominating because it's Drake? No,
No,
you're not going to say that. Exactly. That's what
but
I'm
that's
saying.
because that's
So
one artist though.
no, but you have the Weeknd, who's also a really big artist from Canada, right?
Okay.
So I'm just saying. So
So,
that's not
but in Atlanta you have Thug, Future, Migos, Lil Baby, Big
besides
Baby, like
besides Migos, who's in the
what
top 10 of Billboard every week from
Right
Atlanta.
now,
Besides the Migos,
the baby's one of the biggest artists right now.
the baby is
Right
not from Atlanta,
now,
but he's not from Atlanta.
he's from the South. That's what I was thinking.
hmm.
No, I'm talking about Atlanta. So like
Or if you're
outside
talking
of
about
the Mig,
strictly Atlanta, it's different.
But even then
outside
though, like the sound of music is
It's
heavily
coming from the
influenced.
South.
Yeah, the
no,
sound of
you're
music, the
right.
influence and sound, like when to me, and that's the thing when it comes to having a run. When you have a run, it's also about who is most influential. Like Drake is a very influential artist, but
Right.
and he's a very influential artist. His sound has been influential to artists of all regions. But when you turn the radio on, I bet a dime to a dollar that you're gonna say, oh, oh, he sound like Future. Oh, he sound like Migos. Oh, he sound like Thug. Like, and
You
these are like,
no, you're right. I'll give you that 100%. You're right about that.
Better, better yet, look at
Yeah.
some of the biggest artists and look at where most of their features are coming from. They're coming from Southern artists because they want that sound on their records.
Yeah. To I don't know about that. I mean, if we're talking about Southern artists, yeah, but not like for example, Westside Gunn. Did
I'm
he
not
have
talking
any?
about like
So,
Atlanta, but just the South in general.
well, I mean,
but
of
West
course
Side's
it's.
anomaly though.
Oh, but yeah, but I'm just. But to another point, not all rappers who are big are having Southern rappers on their stuff though.
I'm not saying all, I'm just saying majority.
But even when they don't, they're trying to mimic that sound. Like
No,
French
right.
Montana was sounding like a Southern rapper. Dave East, he kind of rapped more New York, D Block, Locks type of style, but he tried to have. I think he had like one or two records that he tried to push that had more of a Southern feel to it. I believe so, but
Everybody's gonna rap like the Migos.
yeah,
Even
but
Conway, even Conway rap like the Migos or one of his songs. The Calvin song that Nigel liked a lot.
but
Yeah, it's a good
even
song.
That's Amigos flow. So I mean,
but even
I'm not arguing with you with the fact that you're right. Everybody is biting the South's of sound and all that stuff. I just I just don't think like back in 2003, 2004, 2005, you could say that South was a dominating because the top artist at that time was 50, Ja Rule, and Jay Z. I'm just that doesn't mean the South was a dominating. It was. It was everybody outside of the big time artists. Everything else was South,
I'm just
and
not
that's
sure
what I'm
you
saying.
I'm
I
just not
don't.
sure you can say that when if the biggest artists are coming from, let's just say New York, if the dominating sound is from New York, then how can you say that New York wasn't dominating when like Southern artists while they were around and while they were prominent during that time, the sound wasn't dominantly coming from them and it was just around the game, but not dominating anything.
So so Mike Jones wasn't playing through the airwaves across the country.
Was
He
Ludacris
was he
T wasn't playing. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like that, like it was a big deal. I'm in middle school in Maryland, right, which is a lot closer to New York than it is to Atlanta, and I'm this Mike Jones.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Mike Jones had one of the biggest songs at one moment in time, but at the same time, for me, I just can't say the South had a the South's run wasn't there yet because when we because I don't like the discussion of comparing New York to the South because it really has to be East Coast versus the South at that
Okay.
moment. Because when you look at the East Coast and as a whole at that time, you also gotta remind yourself you had Dipset, and we can't front like Dipset. Like Dipset had a run, Joel Santana, Cameron, Jim Jones, blah blah blah. Then you had Jay-Z, you had what was it? State Property, Cassidy, um,
Right.
50 Cent, like G Unit,
I feel
50
like
Cent and G Unit, like
though they all had a run, and you can't discredit their run. But Cameron was the star. 50 was the star, right? Jewels had a hit song or whatever like that, but they weren't top
Jewels
10
was one of
Billboard artists though.
but
You know what I
but
mean?
see,
They
but
weren't.
you can't compare that to today when it comes to Billboard in that sense because the type of music they were making wasn't quote unquote Billboard. And even then I think Cameron was a Billboard artist at that time. Cameron
Right,
was, Jim
but
Jones
not
had a
all of them.
Billboard hit. Jim Jones had a
Yeah,
Billboard hit. Jewels had a Billboard hit. Like they all were big. All those artists from those three artists alone, and Jim Jones was even he wasn't even like the biggest artist at that time. They were putting a lot of influence at that time at that
but they
moment in
didn't
time.
have
Like they were
right. But then outside of Cameron, they didn't have bigger songs than some of the biggest artists from the South at that time.
My question is this then: like, if you're saying that during these runs, like the Dipsets and all those that we just mentioned, if they weren't the most dominant, then who had a more dominant run from the South during that time than they did? Because I can't think of anybody who had a dominant run or any group of artists that had a more dominant run than they did.
The Hot Boys, Cash Money,
That was before that.
that was in like the late '90s, bro. That don't they
no,
weren't
but it
hot.
was, but
They weren't
it
hotter
was
than
still
Murder
carrying
Inc.
the
or
early
Rockefeller.
2000s.
That was
They were
before that, and they weren't the hottest people around.
Yeah, they weren't the hottest. Cash Money was not the hottest. There's no way you could. So Cash Money wasn't hotter than Murder Inc. They weren't hotter than
The
Rockefeller,
who for okay, so I mean like besides
DMX,
Ja Rule, who really from Murder Inc. was really something to talk about, right?
He's not
Because
talking.
Ashanti, Lloyd. Like those weren't
they're
like
not
those are two.
those are
They
not,
had
but
hit
they're not
songs,
rappers. But they're not
but
rappers.
okay, but at that time,
In the early
even
2000s, non-rap songs
but you
was
can't.
always gonna.
But bro, you can't tell me that. But see, that's the thing though. You can't try to tell someone, yo, name me somebody, and then I name you someone, and you're like, well, if they were a big artist, tell me somebody else. Like,
No, but the topic is rappers, and you're naming non-rappers. That's like me saying like, oh well, Godsmack it was the number one rock band
so
in the
I,
world in
I
2003. Like, come on,
so
like we're talking about rap.
outside of Ludacris, who had hot hit music out of his camp,
You
out of
said
Ti,
outside of Ludacris?
who had a hot music out of his camp, out of Nelly, who had
Oh,
hot music out of his camp, Murphy Lee, that's the closest thing you have.
yeah.
like
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
like and that you think Murphy Lee's measuring up to Joel Santana?
No.
You think You think Murphy Lee's measuring up to Jadakiss for the Locks?
Absolutely not.
And they were on Rough Riders. You think they
So
were matching? You think he was matching up to Beanie Siegel?
No.
so that's
like,
my point. It's like if you're
But
gonna
Nelly was
name these
bigger
southern
than Nelly was bigger than Beanie Single.
if you're gonna name some of these
but you
southern
can't.
artists,
But they're
like
And Nelly is bigger
that's
than Jada Kiss and the Locks.
if you're
but
gonna name some of these southern artists, who had a bigger run than they did?
you can't use that though. If you're taking away the Ja Rule thing for me, if I say Ja Rule 50, if I say the biggest artists of that time that were
Yeah.
out of New York, and you're saying take those away, who else did you have? You got to do the same thing when it comes to the southern rappers.
So okay, so by your standards today, that means that Canada must be the dominant force in rap then, because
That's
What sound is coming
you
from
have
Canada?
Drake,
the
What
only
sound
two
is coming from Canada?
biggest rappers out of
you
Canada
have
are Tory
Drake,
Lanez and Drake. That's it.
Drake, yeah, exactly.
But that's it.
But that
But who?
you're not hearing yourself though, and
I
I
am.
don't want to sit here debate about it back and forth all crazy, but I'm just saying like you have you just said you can't ignore the top artists because they're the ones that have the dominant sounds, which is okay, that's fair. That means today, nothing is more dominant than Drake.
Yeah, that Drake is at the end of the day, Drake is at the top of the game. That's without question. I won't dispute that. But that's one artist. Like when you tell me Canada has a run, you need to tell me other artists. Like someone can say, "Oh, Chicago had a run," and I can agree to that because if you had only Chief Keef, if Chief Keef was the only rapper that came out in the 2000 in the tens that was from Chicago, and
So
you said Chicago had a run, I would tell you no. That was
screenshot.
just Chief Keef had a run. You wouldn't be able to tell me, yo, Chicago was like a dominant force at some moment. But when you say, oh, Chicago had Chief Keef, Dirk, Reese, Fredo, and like a list of other artists that came out during that time, during that drill scene. Yes, they had like drill music had a run. And that's the
Right.
same way when it comes to like New York. When I'm naming New York artists, right? When I say New York or East Coast artists had a run, had a longer run during that time when the South was bubbling, I'm not saying two artists. I'm not saying, oh, there was Jay-Z and Cameron. I'm saying there's Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Cameron. You had motherfucking Joel Santana, Cassidy, the Locks, DMX, like Ja Rule, Ashanti. Well, we're not even gonna use Ashanti because you don't want it. It's only rap. We sticking to rap. Like
Fat Joe had a
when you,
little run in there.
yeah, Fat Joe. Like you, like even then, like because even if we're not even gonna go deal with the '90s because if we're dealing with the '90s, you had Big Pun also. Like you had a
Well,
lot of
It's
big
it's
artists.
almost a
But when
clean
we're talking
sweep
about
for real, for real.
it
no,
is
I mean,
compared to
we all
Outkast.
agree that the '90s was all East Coast. We know that. I mean, well, at least definitely early '90s was definitely all East Coast before the West started really getting in there. But as far as like the early 2000s go, I think it's just kind of like it's a little debatable. Yes, the top artist in the world was from New York. So I'm not gonna sit there and argue with that because 50 was huge. Obviously, Jay-Z still huge at that time too. And you did everybody listed like Cameron, Ja Rule, DMX. They were big guys, but you can't discredit the other big guys from Atlanta too. And maybe that's where the discord is at. That's maybe
Yeah,
it's because the top guys, since they were from New York, it's kind of like it's kind of hard to have any other coast really um, have any other coast really kind of compare.
yeah, and maybe that might be it because to me, like when it comes to Southern music starting to have a run or building up the pace for a run, I'm
Yeah,
going with like I'm to me I start at either what is it either Ti Ludacris or like the Swisher House Camp or something like that when they
yeah,
started to have a start or Little John like to me like when Little John came that's when it was like okay they're about to like they're really about to that's when you started seeing that real big them you started seeing a big transition around then with Ludacris,
that
Nelly,
was like
Little
2004
John.
though. That was
Yeah, and
2004 though,
I
That's what we were
and
I
saying.
we
can yeah, and I can agree that 2004 start 2000 late 2004 late 2003 sometime 2004 is when Atlanta was starting to have a run. But
yeah,
50
but
Cent like Get Richard
that's what we were talking about though. The whole time was like 2003, 2004.
Right, but
yeah,
G Unit was still around and they were still the dominant run at that time. Like the real dominance for the South didn't start until maybe 2 or 3 years later after that. They were around while that run was still going on, but the dominant run didn't start until just a little bit after that.
yeah, because I think and to me I think 2004 is like being as like gracious as you can be. Like when it comes to like okay, the South is starting to have a run. 2004. 2004 is like okay, this is about as gracious as we can be. But even then, hey, Mike Jones, I think what is like his songs came out what 2000 his first album didn't come out until 2005. So technically speaking, he probably like if even if you want to coin him as one of the first people to start a run, we're talking to late 2004. So
Yeah,
at that
yeah,
time, late 2004, you're getting what? you're still getting like a lot of you're still getting a lot of Dipset, because even despite having Cameron, Dipset had a lot of big anthems at the time. You had 50 Cent. 50 Cent was huge. G Unit was huge. You had Fabulous. You had Jadakiss, The Locks. I think Jadakiss had a huge song. No, that was like 2001, 2000, or something like that. Why came out? No, Why came out 2002. Um, you had like Cassidy was a huge artist. Like
He's from Philly though, unless you combine in like all of like the eastern
he,
states.
to me, I have to combine the eastern states, because I just can't say New York versus the South, because that's when you're
Yeah,
bringing.
you're right. You're right.
Yeah, because I just can't say Mike Jones and then say, oh well, there's nobody to match that in New York. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like to me, the South didn't really start having a run to like 2004, 2004, 2005. At the end of the day, Jim Jones had what Ballin' was like one of the biggest songs at the time, and that was what 2005,
That was like 2006.
2005, something like that.
No,
No,
it was
that was like '06.
yeah,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
was '06. It was '06 because I went to go
That's
see him perform at homecoming that year. Oh yeah, I'll say I can say 2004 is when it started, because 24s came out in April of '03, but that wasn't a big song. Rubber Band Man was like T.I.'s first big song, I think, and that was like the end of '03. So that's pretty much 2004. So 2004 makes sense.
Mike Jones was around that time too, and what like I can only imagine Swisher House was like right around that time because before
well,
Mike Jones's album. Go
Social has
ahead.
been around. Social has been around before Mike Jones. Or are you
Well,
talking about
yeah,
like the popularity?
what the
Popularity.
popularity
Oh, okay.
because I mean like all that like that was earlier, but like when they were at their when they were coming into their peak was around that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They have Slim Thug, Paul Wall, Mike Jones.
Paul Wall, baby, it's the people's champ.
Yo,
That's
Paul
when the
I,
Wall.
grills was.
So moving on, guys, and I'm gonna switch to like a more like really
Just go for it.
important topic. I just I want to hear you guys' thoughts on what I'm about to like say. Really? So this past week, so we're not in, and I'm saying so a lot. I'm sorry to the fans because that's bad. This past week, since we don't have any real life sports, the only thing close to real life sport that we have is professional wrestling. And one of the
Right.
bigger news is that the let go over 20 plus people. And it's a combination from wrestlers, behind the scenes producers, commentators, this and the other. And it was kind of a big thing because during like this pandemic that we're in, they've all lost their jobs. And not only that they lost their jobs, but now that a lot of them outside of like Kurt Angle, outside of them, nobody really knows who the ones that they lost their jobs. And it's kind of sad because it's like, is this going to be a trending thing for sports where there's going to be athletes that's going to be laid off? And I've seen something like the NBA was thinking about cutting salaries for the players. Now basketball players, they're going to be, they're not, they don't have to worry about like professional wrestlers. Professional wrestlers, they have to worry a bit more, right? Because they don't have the popularity as an NBA player, unless you're like a big time name like The Rock or Kurt Angle or something like that. So, what are your guys' thoughts on stuff like that?
I think it's a little unfortunate, that they had to cut so many people who worked for the company. For that specifically, I'm not sure if that has anything to do with the XFL also having to, file for bankruptcy. Like maybe it's something behind the scenes because I mean, both ran by Vince McMahon. So maybe because he's trying to run two companies and it just so happens that they're both affected by the pandemic, maybe he just couldn't afford to have them both running at the same time. As we know, the XFL, is not a thing anymore. And he might have been prepared to take a blow if the XFL didn't have a good season this year. But I can only imagine he wasn't prepared to shut that down, not have the biggest event for his actual like staple company run, and then be able to support them both at the same time. So it's unfortunate. Like I can only imagine maybe if things weren't so bad, he might be able to cut some pay, but that depends on how he's able to work with both companies at the same time. Obviously, he wasn't. So it's unfortunate more or less anything else.
Yeah, I mean it's unfortunate. I think in those situations, because you said they filed for bankruptcy, right?
Yes.
Like for them to file for bankruptcy, like for XFL, though, I'm gonna answer. I'm gonna make sure I answered like your wrestling question, but like even being that it's ran by Vince McMahon, more than likely if they file for bankruptcy, it means like they probably had too much debt out there. That's like my only assumption because to file for bankruptcy typically means like you owe more than what you can pay. So you're trying to find a way of waiving that off, depending on if it's like Chapter 11, whatever, whatever. But I think even in this situation, he probably after having to like go bankrupt with the XFL and saying like, listen, wrestling is my cash crop, and I'm not like you said, before I funnel any of my other money into it from like his personal funds, being that this is like a real tough time for everybody, it was probably better for that to happen. But even when it comes to like wrestlers, also like you said, he's getting rid of like the no name guys, and I hate to say this, but it's kind of like the inevitable. Like when you look at companies at the end of the day, you never see them say like, oh, yeah, we got to cut back jobs, so let's fire like our CEO or the CFO or like our top management. They
Right.
always go with, well, we need to, okay, well, who's the people that just started working here? All right, we're gonna let go of the new people. Then it's all right, let's go of the entry level people, the new people, and though they're taking pay cuts at the top, at the bottom, and mid level, lower and mid level tier, like they're letting people go. And in this case, when it came to wrestling, it's the same model. Okay, we're gonna have to let some people go, but it sucks. And damn, I hope that didn't sound loud, but it sucks. But like I'm sure like they'll have those like more than likely if they're like a mid level person, they probably it's not like they're making tons of money already. So hopefully they're able to find a way of like taking whatever they do, whether it's training or maybe they'll find a way of doing seminar. Well, shit, nobody's really spending money right now, but I'm hopeful that they'll find a way of saying like, hey, we'll have to figure out a way to bring money in, but it's just gonna be hard for them. Like more than likely, a lot of them probably have some type of job, or maybe they work at some moment in time, or they have other gigs that probably allow them to make other income. So maybe that's the only option for them right now. But that was kind of like I'm not going. It's kind of an inevitable to some extent, though. It sucks, though. I'm not gonna hold you.
What about merchandise? Because like one of the guys that got released, right, was Kurt Angle. So everybody knows Kurt Angle, right, from the old guard days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so I don't think he'll have a hard time like the no name guys will. So he could probably sell some merchandise still, right? But the no name guys, right? Unless you're a diehard fan, you know, is it going to be even tougher for them to sell merchandise just to keep them afloat until they could go back to wrestling?
yeah. I mean, for them, they who knows what they may end up having to do is they may end up just trying to go to another wrestling
Company.
brand. Yeah, another company. And because like you said, like they merchandise will probably help them when it comes to like just building some type of money or whatever, so they're able to be like, all right, cool, I can put this on, tuck this away until I can find another job. But like being in wrestling from being my understanding of wrestling, and granted it's a little outdated, like WWE is like at the top as
Right.
far as my
Yeah.
understanding is concerned. So it's kind of like, oh, you're at the top level, but you're like a low hanging fruit at the top, at the highest level of the sport. You can probably be like a top person at like a mid tier company. So maybe that may be the most viable option. It's just depending on how they'll navigate through that with everything being the way it is, because more than likely that means they will probably have to move to like Japan or like somewhere overseas, probably.
And how do you think it'll translate with other sports too? Like, so UFC, we didn't see any cuts, right? And we haven't seen any cuts in the NBA and the NFL, even though we definitely seen the whole XFL fold. Do you think like this will translate into other sports where some of the leagues, not leagues because the league doesn't own the teams, the teams are privately owned, but do you see some owners, like for example, let's say Jerry Jones, it's like, look, Dak, we can't pay you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, the only reason I think maybe a part of the reason why we see certain people being let go from the WWE, and mind you, like the WWE is handled in a different way than like uh, it's handled in a different way than the actual sports are, because we all know that professional wrestling, it's scripted, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So they can afford to let go. Like, I don't want to say they can afford, it's just handled differently. That's what I'll say. Not only with it not being an actual sport, also the owner is doing other things outside of the sport. So I'm not sure how much money that he specifically is willing to lose. Now, and also like with the other brands that are associated with him, like I'm not sure how much money they're willing to lose. And since it's not a sport where actual stakes are on the line, I'm not sure if other leagues will follow suit, because if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just signed Tom Brady, they're not going to be like, hey, you're not signed anymore. We got to save money now because all the shit's going on. You know what I mean? But if you let go of a legend like Kurt Angle, which he is one, at the same time, he isn't a scripted sport. They can just get somebody else to follow the script.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not like
Yeah.
it's. I see what you're saying. You can't if LeBron were to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know, it's not like we could replace him with another person and rename him LeBron James and make
Exactly.
it. Yeah, yeah. So I see what you're saying with that. Um, Wrestling is definitely more or less of a big entertainment thing versus it being a real sport and all that stuff. But ESPN they still show it as a sport and all that stuff like that.
Right.
And I think they're just doing that kind of like, hey, we all know what the joke is, but we're not gonna just blatantly go out and say it's scripted, right? But
Plus, you
do
gotta
you,
realize that some like they. I think my understanding, and I'm sure it's never changed when it comes to wrestling, but a lot of their fans are kids. A lot of times, like it's
yeah,
adults,
yeah,
but it's a lot of kids. So, and I don't know about you, but as a kid, I thought this shit was real for like the
yeah,
longest until I got a little older. So. They just carry it like, oh, we know we're gonna get another demographic in that typically wouldn't watch our sport, wouldn't watch ESPN, except to see, I don't know who the maybe Roman Reigns or whoever like the big
yeah.
time wrestlers are now. So
No, yeah, you're right. And it's kind of like we're really into. Well, I can't speak for you guys, but like when I was younger, I was really into like the X-Men, and I was really into Power Rangers. And if you were to show
thanks.
me like the behind the scenes stuff, all that would have kind of killed my childhood, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so, so
It's
yeah,
like
I
saying Santa
definitely,
isn't real.
yeah, yep. So, with that being said, do you think the drafts for NFL, NBA are still going to continue, or do you think they're going
Yep.
to postpone them?
I
Uh,
definitely do. Go ahead, Spence.
well, no, I was gonna say I thought the NFL draft is still about to happen, right?
It's happening in 5 days. I'm excited.
I think that's going to be like the most watched thing on for sports TV.
Oh
Listen,
yeah.
ESPN is gonna drag that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
They're
hell
they
gonna
yeah.
are.
they're gonna drag that for like Lord knows how long, because I'm quite sure everybody's tired of like posting like NBA final games from like 2009, 2010.
Well, before we end this off, I wanted to talk about Bernie Sanders
Yes.
and him dropping out of my man Bernie Sanders dropping out of the race, and just seeing the fallout from that. I saw that he was talking to Cardi B, and
Yeah.
just on the
Spoke to
stream or
Joe
whatever.
Budden.
Oh, he was talking to Joe Budden.
Not Joe Budden. Shit, Joe
Joe
Biden.
Biden.
It's
Yeah, we
like
got Joe
what?
Biden. How are y'all
Yeah,
feeling about that?
I think what the Bernie thing. was you could see it from down the road. It's what happened to him 4 years ago, right? Where the whole Democratic Party basically they box him out because he's when we're talking about like real right side Republican, well Bernie was the opposite, right? He was real left side to the point even some Democrats were like, oh whoa, we can't let this happen. So if we're not going to win, that's fine. We'll just team up together and we're gonna box this guy out. And essentially, it was just a repeat of that. And I was looking at some of the comments, like in the Shade Room and other other pages, and a lot of people from the urban community were a little upset about it because they were kind of like, Bernie was their guy. I'm not saying Bernie's policies was 100% correct, right? Because no politician has 100% correct policies, but it
Right.
seemed like a lot of people were from the urban community rather have him than Biden. But now it looks like is going to be um, a big support for Biden now, just because of he's the Democratic nominee, and to me that's not the right thing to do. You shouldn't vote Democrat because you're a Democrat. You should vote for what's best for you and your family. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
my prediction is I think Trump is going to win again. I'm not voting for Trump, but I just think he's going to win again. I just don't think Biden's going to get enough support to overcome him. He might get more support than Hillary, right? But Biden has a dirt on him too, which they're already starting to dig up and posterize.
But even
Well, let
then,
me.
like when it comes to dirt, though, I feel like I feel like dirt is going to be taken with a teaspoon because, like, and I'm not, and I'll be honest, I'm not like the super political person,
Right.
but you look at the previous, like the current president right now, like
Yeah,
all the stuff that was coming out with him at the time. You'd be surprised. I met older women that were like in their 40s and 50s that were like, "Oh, that's like all the stuff, like everything that came out between him sleeping with the porn star, the affair with the porn star, to grab him by the pussy or whatever." Like I see women defend it. So I think even in this situation, like a lot of dirt is manageable to some extent. I think it helps the right side just because it's like, okay, the way his style of debating with people, it'll help him in the sense of like how he kind of focuses in on like small things or small nuances instead of like really answering questions for the bigger picture to understand the bigger picture. um and like with to me, like with Bernie, like I think I, to me, I feel like Bernie wasn't going to have a chance after Super Tuesday, personally. Um, and even for me, I watched some of the debates. Like Bernie had some good points, but I think the way I watched when I was watching the debates, I I I was looking more at who can actually go against Trump at the end of the day, and that's just how I looked at it, like in terms of debating styles, because to me, like I feel like there's a formula that Trump has when it comes to just any type of confrontation with people. And to me, I think Bernie would have had a very hard time because he's just the amount of passion that he has behind a lot of subjects. I think he would find himself stepping into Trump's world trying to really debate stuff, and when you step into his world, I hate to say it, and I'm not saying I'm a supporter of him or anything. You're gonna have a long day, long story
Right.
short.
I agree with
So
that.
like you can't beat a guy at his own game. So like I think Biden has a good chance of winning. Will he win? I can't even give you a prediction just because of, I mean, heck, Trump lost the popular vote and he won the electoral vote. So it's a
right.
possibility that if Biden can get the electoral
Just
vote as well as a popular vote, I think he may be good. I think they said he has Florida, which is typically a red state as well. So
I
he
don't
has to
know.
win.
It's
He has to win certain states, or for him to win, right? The popular vote. I mean, in my opinion, I always think the popular vote should be worth more than right? The electoral vote was a bunch of nonsense, especially if you go into the history of the electoral vote. But I don't want to go into that right now because that'll take some time. But you know, he has to win the he has to win the states with the biggest electoral votes in him, and that's what's most important. But you know, winning it and I mean saying it and actually doing it is just very big, man. I mean, they're two is so in contrast with each other, and right now, a lot of people are on the Trump train, and the people who are not on the Trump train, they just want anybody to beat them, but they're not necessarily a fan of any of the candidates. Because like I said, not a lot of people were happy that Biden got the nominee. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm not sure if Joe Biden will win because at the end of the day, I don't think a lot of people support Joe Biden. And I don't think really a lot of people are supportive of the Democratic Party and the way they've been going about things like for these past two elections. Like
Yeah.
they're kind of split between this well, as they call it, like the more progressive side and the more like I would say the old guard of the Democratic Party.
The
And it seems
conservative
like
side.
yeah, the more conservative side, and they're not really letting more progressive candidates, and that goes like across the spectrum of the Democratic Party and like different seats in office. They're not really letting those candidates have their shine and actually like take seats, like because it just seems that they're infighting more or less than fighting the other side, which
Yeah.
would be the Republican side.
Yep.
And it's kind of unfortunate because there's certain politicians who are coming up who have good ideas, who have good ideas on policies that aren't being able to even go up against Donald Trump for, like to even put their policies in place. So it's just while I would like to see Joe Biden win, I'm not sure if he will win. I think it's an uphill battle. I think that Donald Trump has. I, I'm curious to see how the way things are being handled right now is going to affect the presidential run for Donald Trump because he has a very dedicated fan base, more or less than people in support, like his supporters. He has a fan base, is what I would say, and I think those people will go out and vote for him. And I'm curious to see how those people are during this pandemic are thinking about him because pretty much that's what you're voting for the next 4 years. Because
Yep.
if something even worse were to happen in the next 4 years, then I'm curious to know because at the end of the day, like we voted for an economic president, which is what we got. And even you can see like when he speaks, he's saying, "Hey, we need to open up now. We need to open up now because
Yes.
the economy
Yep.
needs to run."
Yep.
But everybody's saying, "Hey, we shouldn't open up until like we might not be able to open up till next year." He's saying, "Open up now because the economy needs to run." He's
because
saying,
he's the
"Open up
president.
now." Yeah, because he's the president. I'm going to force them to open up. He's saying, if we don't open up now, people are going to commit suicide, and that it's just there's just a lot of things going on. So I'm while I had a certain thought before all this happened, I'm curious to see if it changes at all.
I mean, to be honest with you, I was speaking to someone recently, and I don't know if they were joking because I think they didn't reply after I had something to say after I responded to them. But it was something it was like some meme or whatever that I saw floating around. So I sent it to someone, and it was somewhat similar to like politics at the moment, and the person was just like, "Yo, Trump." Like they was like, "I have no complaints about Trump. My stimulus check just came." So it's like okay,
Wow.
so like, and you have to realize, and I'm not saying this person in particular, I think is a much smarter than that, but like you have people out here that just kind of, some people are just very nearsighted in terms of what is necessary to sway their opinion.
Right.
Excuse me. So I think some of those people in particular, they're just going to be like, "Oh, well, I got the check and that's it." Like just like I don't know if you heard, but he he was trying to freeze people's checks from distributing like paper checks so he could sign each one or get his name on each check, apparently. Just and I think that's more or less a marketing strategy for to help endorse his campaign as he runs again. So because I think he's going to try to leverage the whole if I open the economy back up now, people will be back in their jobs. So if people are back in their jobs, despite the risk that may come with it, they'll be like, "Oh, he helped. Hey, he got me my job back. He got like he stopped. He saved." In most people's eyes, in a nearsighted way of looking at it, they'll say he saved our economy, or whatever. And mm, I wouldn't go that far because you're putting lives at risk. Like you saw what Dr. Oz said. Put the kids back in school. I mean, only 2 to 3% of them will probably die. Like,
Yeah, that's just wild.
You know, he had to
That shit's
go back
crazy.
and apologize for
retract.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw something about that. But even then, like, see, to me, sometimes even when people retract their statements, and I understand, like, sometimes it comes from a sincere place, but I think when people retract, to me, I find nothing wrong, or I'm more accepting of people retracting their statements when it's based off a spurred of a moment conversation or a conversation where it was thinking at that moment or in the moment, but I feel like for him to say something like that, it's based off some common thought that he's had or some conversation that he's had with others. So to me, for him retracting that statement is just saying like, "Hey, I just don't want to lose my deals or whatever the case may be." It's like a political move, essentially. Like, oh, let me just stay in the good graces of others. But like, I mean, even then, like, granted, I know what Trump wants to do is open. Well, they're actually starting a policy to open the country back up in areas, certain like low risk areas, which I think isn't good. Just because if you keep everything closed for a little bit, at least a few more weeks, right? You'll be able to have people. It's encouraging the probability of people not getting infected primarily, and then like secondly well, it's really just that. It's like you want to lower the probability of people getting infected because it leads to deaths and leads to people to it spreading. I've like I've heard a couple people that I know a few people that actually have COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And when hearing about that, like getting that type of news from people, like and it's not nobody that lives here, but like it's several people that have told me this the question becomes, well, did their spouse get it? Did the people at their job get it? Like it becomes that conversation. So and it's something that you have to wait days to figure out if you have it or not. Like it's not like you get tested. It's kind of like an AIDS test or something. You don't get the test right back in like the next 24 in the next 2 hours or 30 minutes.
Right.
Sometimes you have to wait. So when it comes to getting like certain testing like that done, it's just I to me I personally wouldn't encourage putting people back in quote unquote harm's way, no matter how small the amount of cases there are, until we're able to facilitate this as a whole. So because I know Florida opened back up also. Florida's opening up essential areas from
Yeah,
like
the
selected
beaches.
time. Yeah, the
Yeah, but
beaches and parks during certain
yeah, but
times.
they already got like 1,000 plus cases since doing so, and apparently they had like 50 plus deaths. So,
Wow.
Florida, yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, Florida is making New York look like a stepchild right now, and
Wasn't it?
the
It was like almost 5,000 people died in one day in the U.S. In the U.S., right?
that number I can't confirm or deny. I'm gonna have to actually look that up, but I just know Florida is the hotbed of it right now,
So it
and I
moved
think,
from New York to Florida.
huh?
It moved from New York to Florida.
Well, and the reason being is because the fact Florida's they're not closing everything, and they're starting to open things up, despite the fact they have high case rate and a high death rate. You know what I mean? And I get it. Florida's a hot tourist attraction, and the economy there depends on tourism and certain things like the beaches and all that. But when it comes to like life, you should probably shut that down for a while. You know what I mean? Like Delaware, the numbers in Delaware have been shooting up, but they're not New Jersey numbers or New York numbers, and we're still pretty much on lockdown. You know what I mean? Maryland too. Maryland is not big as those, but they're pretty much on lockdown. So when it comes time for them to reopen up, the the risk there is going to be a lot less. But Florida, for some reason, they just want to stay open, and maybe there's more to it than that. But it's just from somebody who's just like a casual person, right? It's just kind of like it's kind of crazy looking at it. And I've seen that Texas, they're starting next week. They're going to start opening business up too, because they feel like they're ready to go back. I feel like people are so in a rush to go back, and I understand for economic value, but if you catch something and you spread it amongst the other people and they pass away from it, it's sad. You know what I mean? Because like yesterday, I seen that the first pro wrestler died from COVID, and now this pro wrestler wasn't a well-known one, or it would have been across the news. But the fact that it's just reaching out to other sports is going to be crazy. It's only going to be a matter of time before you have like a big-time celebrity or big-time entertainer that's still somewhat in the prime today that gets seriously affected by it to the point of death. And nobody wishes for that, but it's if that ever happens, I wonder how the country is going to look at it as a whole. If they're going to be like, "Wow, we really need to close up now," because we live in a society where a lot of people idolize what they see on TV.
Yeah. I mean, I think well, like I said, I think I think everything needs to be closed. I know it has an impact on the economy. I know there's a increase, like the amount of unemployment is almost damn near doubling by the week.
Yeah,
I know the amount of cases in Delaware are doubling by the week, just about. Like
yeah,
you got to remember the first case happened like what early March, and now we're like it's like almost 6 weeks ago. We went from one case to almost we're probably close to 3,000 now.
yeah,
Um, but I think a lot of people should just really just sit down. I think partially in America, especially. Well, I'm not even gonna say America. I think just human nature overall. You want to be back outside, and I think for us, a lot of people are very impatient. So I think a lot of people, one, I side with people that are ready to go back to work so they can start bringing in income because it's very devastating. But then you
right,
also have people that are just like, I just want to go outside. I just want to be able to go outside. I want to be able to go do regular routine, and they don't know how to. Like we said a couple weeks ago, some people don't. Some people are boring people, and they just want to be back outside.
Right.
yeah.
They just want to, be able to go out and do things, and because they don't have any personality.
They want to go to the
Exactly.
club and bait guys to buy them drinks and all that stuff because they really don't got no money.
Yeah.
Y'all ready to wrap it up?
No,
Yeah.
no, I'm not ready to wrap it up because we forgot to talk about Trump's best friend, Kanye.
Oh God.
Oh
Hey,
yeah.
well,
So
we're kind of running into time though. That's the
Well,
so
thing.
let's
well
let's
let's not
just
talk
keep it
about
real
this too
quick.
long. Let's not talk about it too long then. But just quick opinions. Kanye thinks he's the rap game's Kobe Bryant. From an artistic value from it, I can see what he's saying. Kind of like he has the Mamba mentality, where he's you know he's determined and he's devoted to his craft. But from like, and if you want to talk about stats and number wise, and you could, I guess you could try to make some type of correlation. Uh, you would have to dive deep though for that. But as far as just like as a person himself, I would not say he's Kobe Bryant of the rap
Nah.
I don't know about Kobe Bryant at a rap game. At the end of the day, I think he makes some good cases. He makes some really good cases to call himself that. Um, I just don't. I'm still not sure if I would go that far because I mean, to me, Excuse me. To me, it's Jay-Z's the Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
LeBron is the Drake is LeBron. I mean, Kanye could be considered. He could be considered the Kobe Bryant. It kind of makes sense. Like he's kind of like the one of the biggest artists in between those eras that still is who he is. Like to me, some people will maybe argue that would be Wayne, but I personally disagree.
I would never say Wayne. Because Wayne, I would say he was more like somebody who didn't win an NBA title. I feel like Wayne would be like
Oh,
kind of
you
like
got to. He was the biggest artist in the world at one moment.
Yeah, but you're not going to call him the Kobe?
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm not, but I'm saying like I think it's an argument for people to have. Some people could argue that just because, like, when you look at Wayne's track record over the course of like the 20 years of like almost 23 or 24 years of his career, from going from being like one in the Hot Boys and all of that to Carter One Go DJ to eventually having like one of the biggest mixtape series of all time behind some other prominent artists, to becoming really having a mixtape run that led him to being one of the biggest artists in the world, that ultimately led us to hearing some of the greatest artists in the world that followed him. And I mean, he shut down the internet multiple times, off of just dropping projects on like that Piff and everything. So it's an argument there. But when it comes to like talent in terms of like musically, I think Kanye West surpasses Wayne when it comes to talent overall. So I but there's an argument there nonetheless. But for the sake of the conversation, I'm gonna side with Kanye, that he has the right to be considered to consider himself or for people to consider him the Kobe Bryant.
Nigel, just a quick opinion before we wrap it up.
Quick opinion, real quick. I would say that if let's just, I think we can say that Jay-Z is the Michael Jordan of rap, right?
Yeah.
Michael Jordan of recording.
And Drake is the LeBron, right?
Yes. After Waka Flocka. No,
after Waka Flocka. So you know,
no,
like I was trying to think about it as y'all are, without getting too much into it, and I don't really. This is like without really putting too much thought into it, and without because I don't want to be stuck to this opinion. I think a name that you could possibly put in the Kobe Bryant of rap is Eminem, and I'll leave that there.
Okay, cool.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. Yeah. I think we should just end it on that note, honestly.
Yeah. All right. Final notes, guys, before we call it a day.
Stay safe, everybody. There's not much going on. There's not much going on for next week. There's not much going on the rest of the month. Nobody's doing shit. Just stay safe. Stay inside. That's it.
Facts. You got anything, Lau?
Yeah, just piggyback off of Nigel, and then everybody just continue to follow our podcast, our pages individually, and just continue to stay safe. Don't blow any money because you're sitting home. Just trying to keep the money as much as you can. It's gonna pay off once this pandemic is over, and that's it.
Yeah, and with that being said, all I got to say is stay safe, stay dangerous, watch out for corona zombies, and hold on your stimulus check. Don't spend it all unless you got to, because I know some people are having it hard right now. So
if you're gonna spend it, spend it on us.
Facts. Facts. Drop a bag. Yo, Nigel Thigh, drop a bag on him. He'll do what you need.
Nah. That sounds wild. Nah. All right. We good?
Yeah, we out.
Good.
All right.
All right. Till next time, everybody. Peace.